Hello and welcome to the Deep NBA podcast. My name's Sean. Joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boffman. Mr. Boffman, man, how are you?
I'm good, Sean. So energized for playing basketball. Playoff basketball. Playing basketball.
Yeah, well, we should start off the pod by saying congratulations to the Minnesota Timberwolves for winning the NBA championship and celebrating justly.
Patrick Beverley was crying.
Patrick Beverley was crying.
Oh my god.
Kat was kissing his girlfriend. Ant jumped on the... Ant just seems... I mean, he's really young, but he seems like a little kid that was like, oh, Pat's on the stanchion. I'll do it too. And then he got up and he's like he's Dwayne Wade. Just super cringe.
Yeah. I was listening to the Dunked On podcast. I know you love the Dunked On podcast. It was with Danny LaRue and Nikias Duncan, who love him. He's got some really insightful takes, but he sounds like he's chewing whilst he speaks. Like, he literally sounds like he's eating.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were talking about the Timberwolves, and he was like, man, like, people will want to go... Maybe people will want to go and play in Minnesota because, like, Kat's really good, and, like, Ant, just as a person, like, he's really personable. And I was like, yeah, he's personable. In my head, he's personable and he gives you great sound bites. But if you were an adult and you had to spend 6 days of your week for 6 months of the year with Anthony Edwards, wouldn't you be fucking over it pretty quickly? Wouldn't you be like, actually, this kid's not personable, he's just fucking annoying.
Yeah. It's just like, turns out the journalist who uses Ant's quotes to buff up his pieces likes him because he has great quotes to buff up his pieces.
Yeah, like if there was no like NBA Instagram to go like, Ant said what? Then would people like him? Or would they just be like, bro, can you shut up? Because that's the kind of the vibe that I get.
Yeah.
And the Wolves in general just have like a really insufferable air around them in many ways. Because you've obviously got Pat Bev, who's like the leader of the clubhouse, and nothing needs to be said on why Pat Bev is so irritating. Blood has already been spilled in that arena. Obviously, I've just mentioned Ant. Kat is also like the most annoying faux tough guy in the league. Like,
I don't even think he's trying to be a tough guy.
Nah, he is.
He's just a large person with,
he always gets up and about and he's always flexing and he's yelling to the crowd. And it's like, bruh, you're literally a finesse big man.
Yeah. Well, in the game that we're going to talk about, where they beat the Clippers, like Nick Batum doing an excellent job on him. Like, started off 0-4 and then was like, 2 of 6, no, not 2 of 6, but fouled out, terrible game, 4 turnovers, right? He like got this offensive rebound and then did that little flex where he puts his fist like as low down as possible.
Yeah.
And Nick Batum did not even give a shit. You could just look at his face, and his face said, "Man, you've got 4 turnovers and 5 fouls. Like, don't flex too hard."
Who was it that like? There was someone who celebrated like crazy, and maybe then like. Maybe it was like Kyrie or someone was like, "You're down 47."
Yeah.
Also that quote from again, I can't remember who it was, but the Bobcat era Charlotte team with Bismack Biyombo, where he like blocked someone, was like, "Not in my house," or he was like, "This is my house," and then someone else was like, "You have 7 wins. This is everyone's house." Kat played 24 minutes. He obviously fouled out. He had 11 points on 3 of 11 shooting. And was a minus 14 in a 5-point game.
The team got much better when he sat.
Yeah.
Which, isn't a great sign for a superstar. But we'll talk about that later, because even though it would have been a beautiful segue, we should start off with the most recent play-in game. So today we had New Orleans beat San Antonio 113-103, and the Atlanta Hawks beat the Charlotte, not Bobcats, 132-103, even though they looked a lot like Bobcats out there.
They did look a lot like Bobcats out there.
Niece Kylie, get on that cough, please. We'll start off with New Orleans and San Antonio. I would say the marquee game of the day, and the first nationally televised game for the San Antonio Spurs this season. And I was like, no way. Yeah, it is. So
surely they shifted that one where Pop was going to get the record into like prime time. Come on.
Yeah, but like, how do you know? Like, because did he beat the Raptors to? I think he might have beaten the Raptors.
No, you just do it until he gets it.
Oh, dude. Nah, you don't do that. I don't want to have... I mean, there's 20 nationally televised Knicks games, so it's not like,
It's not like it's sacred, yeah. It's saying that we can't watch the greatest coach of all time get crowned as the greatest coach of all time. That if I'm from like
Minnesota.
Wisconsin. There you go. Great minds think about northern states. If I'm from either of those two states and I wanted to watch it and I can't afford to pay $350 a year for League Pass to get the absolute fucking worst product in the entire world imaginable, Adam Silver, if you're listening, fix this shit.
Yeah.
I can't watch it.
Yeah.
I'd only hear about it through hearsay.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be down at the water cooler at work or at the at the service station that's also got like a hotel attached to it, like a restaurant, and I'd be like catching up with my mates. And they'd be like, "Oh, did you hear Pop got the record?" Oh man, amazing for him. No. Put it on national TV.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my only qualm is that when Golden State was in their first title season, 2014-15, they were like top of the West. They went up against the Atlanta Hawks, who had a better record and were top of the East, and that game was scrapped. It was not on national TV for the Lakers and Celtics, who had like Brandon Ingram as a rookie versus Marcus Smart as a rookie.
Well, I'm glad you're not holding on to it.
So the San Antonio Spurs, in the one game they got on national television, they lost. It was a good game. It was a good game for most of the way, but I think what really lost it for the Spurs today was the fact that DeJounte Murray picked up 3 really early fouls. It was like, a couple of minutes into the second quarter, DeJounte picked up his 3rd foul, and it was like, and Pop was just like, I'm not mucking around with this. I need him at the end of the game. And it was the right decision because DeJounte played really well in the 4th quarter. But it would have helped to maybe take away 4 of those 4th quarter minutes and slap maybe 10 in the second quarter because in that second quarter when DeJounte was out, obviously that's their best perimeter defender and one of very limited amount of really good players for the San Antonio Spurs. They just got rolling. Brandon Ingram is tall enough to shoot over every single person in silver and black, and as soon as he was getting advantages, he was kicking out to CJ McCollum, who was like. He was on. Like he was, he's obviously got the whole thing about being a leader, coming to New Orleans, trying to pull them into the playoffs, and he's the veteran of that team. But like he was on. He was getting some like really nice catch and shoots and relocates off of a Brandon Ingram advantage. But he also had these just fucking dirty little jabs, which I know you would appreciate because you really like me. We both like CJ's game, but he would get the ball like little jab. All of a sudden he's just risen up and hit the 3, and it's like that's fucking hot. Man.
It felt like he was getting a lot. Off the dribble drive as well, just penetrating from the perimeter. And without DeJounte out there, like he's going against much more favourable defensive matchups. There was a period maybe late second quarter when the lead kind of ballooned out, and it literally felt like the Pelicans were winning by 50 points. Yeah. They were getting everything I felt like they'd gone on a 15-0 run, and then I looked at it.
That's the thing with SKC.
It was 8-2, and SKC was absolutely jumping. SKC was jumping. The Smoothie King Center was going off. Playing basketball back where it belongs. But yeah, it really did feel for stretches of this game like it was completely out of reach for San Antonio. And to be completely fair, it was a 17-point game going into the 4th. It ended up being 10 points, but it was never actually really.
Well, I do want to mention that, and I haven't watched a Spurs game in a long time. I've probably watched a couple throughout the season. I really just prefer watching playoff teams.
I reckon I watched 2, and it was Phoenix versus Spurs and the Spurs versus Phoenix.
So I completely forgot that Greg Popovich, whether he does it intentionally, he'll just sit there, arms crossed. He could be on a 50-2 run, and he'll be like, "You probably should get out to that Devin Vassell." He'll just sit there completely stone-faced, and it's I completely forgot. What a fucking sick CUNT. We can swear on this fucking podcast. I just drew attention to
Nothing that we have not done before.
But in the 4th quarter, the Spurs absolutely locked down on defense. They had fresh legs of DeJounte. They had Josh Richardson, who was playing well and at least playing better than Josh Primo, who sort of had a Keith Bogan start, but also the dude's 15 fucking years old. Jakob Poeltl was playing incredible defense, both helping and on JV, because JV got plenty of post-up opportunities by himself. But they went on a 16-1 run, and there was an over 5-minute stretch in the 4th quarter where the Pelicans didn't score, not even a free throw. Yeah. And the whole time, I'm sitting there it was pretty gritty. They were struggling to score on one end, and it was a lot of Keldon Johnson offensive rebounds. It's this isn't really repeatable. And they just kept on getting it up there. And the whole time, Pop's team is playing the absolute arse off, and he sat there, arms crossed, didn't smile whatsoever. And this could be the last time I ever see him coach a basketball game, and you too. But I think it was a really good it's obviously you want to go out on top, and this definitely isn't on top, the 9-10 play-in game. And he had a quote after the game where he sort of snapped at a reporter asking him if this was going to be his last season. But this is a pretty cool last game where he is on an undermanned squad, and his team just put together just a beautiful, scrappy 16-1 run that was spurred on by the defense. Pardon the pun.
Yeah, pardon the pun. I was like, what? Amazing pun. Yeah, I mean, in terms of Pop going out on top, he should just, this should be it. Please, just end it.
Start something new in San Antonio.
No one is being served by this. We're gonna, if he comes back next year and they're gonna be the exact same team, Pop will remember him for the 2 or 3 years of missing the playoffs, rather than what we should be remembering him for, which is his overall oeuvre, his body of work. And the Spurs, something needs to happen here. There needs to be a fresh injection. This is not working. There's no identifiable plan for the future. You need to just rip the Band-Aid off and move on organizationally. So I really hope that was his last game.
Yeah.
Pop, you've earned it. Go and do something fun. Move to Florida and just kick back and enjoy your countless tens of millions and just vibe. Be 78. However old he is. Fucking hell.
Yeah. And
as soon as I turn 60, I'm out. I'm done.
And friend of the program and friend housemate of the program, Jackson Leach, is a Spurs fan, and he was happy either way here because he either wins, Pop maybe gets to try and go for the playoffs in one final year, or he loses, and they've got the ninth pick now. They've got the best odds at the 9th pick. And I think they have a 20.4% chance of jumping up into the top 4, which is quite huge actually, considering they're 9th. But it's really look, you've got Lonnie Walker, you've got Josh Primo, you've got Devin Vassell, you've got all these wings that none of them are okay, we've got something to build around here. You don't even have a Mikal Bridges type where it's okay, he's clearly not the guy, but as soon as he's part of a bigger thing, it's he's awesome.
Yeah, well, you could see that happening with Vassell, Primo, even someone like Keldon Johnson, who's flashed to just be a really high-level starter. They're all kind of still, you could see a path where they're amazing.
But there's nothing to build
But they're unknowns. They're they're liquid assets. You don't really know exactly what you have in them. And yeah, there's nothing to build around. Even DeJounte Murray, it's he was amazing this year. He was an all-star for the first time. He's still an all-defensive level defender. That's excellent. But he... do you really think that he's going to get much better than this? And he was the last All-Star in, So it's if the only tangible thing that you have is the 25th best player in the league, then what do you really have here?
They need a high pick to reset it, and I think as long as Pop's there, they're not going to bottom out and tank.
No, well, because he's too good for them to win 20 games. They're going to be... He's going to get the absolute most out of this group that he can, that anyone could, which I think is what he's done this year. I think he's done a really good job coaching, but that's kind of the problem. It's just he just locks them into this no man's land that's serving neither him nor them. So...
Okay, just before we move on, Herb Jones, really, really, really good in this game. And something that I liked about these play-in games is that you're seeing all these guys who you wouldn't usually see in playoff-like situations, where the crowd at SKC, Smoothing King Centre, was really good.
Yeah.
And Bill Simmons likes to talk about guys who, I think it's his Ewing theory, where it's our guy's going to shrink from the moment, and it's usually have to wait a couple of years until someone, if they do eventually make the playoffs, whether it's okay, let's say D'Angelo averages 50 points in the playoffs. It's okay, he's clearly there's something here. Dudes who didn't shy away from the moment. Herb Jones, who just had this amazing block, which was then recovered by DeJounte, and he managed to run around him, get the steal as he tried to kick it out. Herb Jones looked incredible, hit a couple of threes. Brandon Ingram, in a very favourable matchup, looked very, very comfortable, and he started the game with a poster dunk over Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl played extremely well, was extremely solid, and Devin Vassell, 7 3-pointers today.
He attempted 13. That's insane. That's actually crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's probably enough on this one. Should we move on to probably the least appetizing game of any of these, Hornets and Hawks? which was concluded earlier this morning, and the Hawks...
it was concluded a little bit earlier
Yeah,
than that.
earlier than that. The Hawks got up 132 to 103, and it felt like it.
Yeah.
It really, really felt like it. The whole game, it was just like two teams, identical records, both with 43 wins, and one was just like not in the other's league whatsoever. Yeah, it felt kind of like, I kind of felt bad, you know, when you're watching something like brutal happen and you're like, oh, I just wish for your sake, Charlotte, yeah, you know, you put it in the group chat like mercy rule, surely. I was like, wish that this could just end. They'd be like, yeah, you know what, like we'll just call it after third quarter time, like that's it.
Well, I mean, I also said mercy rule because I knew there was a good game afterwards. It's like I have to sit here for 12 minutes, and every time they blow the whistle and stop the clock, it's going to be like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was just. It started off good. Like Charlotte were blitzing Trae Young really heavily, and then Trae Young just immediately gave that nice little bounce pass to Clint Capella, or as Lucas calls him, Clint Capella. That doesn't sound good on audio, but there is a difference in the way it's spelled. And what's his name? Capella had some really nice sort of actions, like in that, you know, it's like Draymond if he was 3 seconds slower. We would catch the ball and he'd be like, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, there's someone open. It's not you. Oh, he's rotated. Bang, wide open 3-point shooter. And it's like awesome. So they got a couple of threes off that. And as soon as Capella had swung it out, the defense rotates and he had a couple of offensive rebounds. And it was like, you know, that's just good. The defense switched it up. Charlotte tried to zone. Then Charlotte tried to just switch it. And then Charlotte tried to like go straight up. This is all against Trae Young, I should mention. And Trae Young, you know, put him against like the 28th. I mean, they're not the 28th defense, but they're a fucking horrible defense in Charlotte. Put him up against a really good defense, and he probably scores 30. But put him up against a horrible one, and he absolutely cooked him. So really, like we all knew this was going to happen. Do you want to talk about the game, or do you want to talk a little bit broader, like what the frick, Charlotte?
Yeah, I think broader is better because the game was just like they were completely outclassed. Their role players played shit. Their best players played shit. Like they were, like I said, just picked apart like on a systemic level. Like it wasn't like an individual display of brilliance. It wasn't like the Hawks gritting their teeth and getting it done. Like Trae didn't like take control of the game. It was just like. They were like, we know exactly what you're going to do, and we have a very basic counter for anything that you're going to throw at us, and it's anyone on the court can execute it, and we're just going to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, it's like watching the football, and like someone's trying to, you know, one team's trying to play, I mean the round ball football. Someone's trying to play a high press against a team that's really good passing the ball, and it's like you can just see them like, you're going to come up, I'm going to go over here, 3 passes, and we're like into the attacking third. It's like. You get it, but you just watching it be unpicked so easily is like, come on, like something needs to change here.
Yeah.
So I think more broadly, like this team's been bad on D every single year that James Borrego's been there, and James Borrego's taken them from being bad to being decent.
I think I'll get it up for you. I probably shouldn't have butted in. And
get it up for me. I should be so lucky.
At work, we've got this idea called I should be Souvlaki. that's the business name. Where what you do is you go in and it's BYO, like BYO food. And the whole idea is you come in, Charlotte are 20th in defense, 6th in offense. You come in, BYO food, and we'll deep fry it for you. So you'll have this deep fryer cook who's like, he understands all the different batters you need. Like, right, you got a piece of fish, we can obviously just do like a beer batter. But if you've got a Mars bar, maybe we go for a bit more of a sweet batter before we deep fry it. So you rock up to Ushabi souvlaki with whatever it is. The idea comes from deep frying a souvlaki, where you might have a souvlaki and then the chef goes, right, we're going to have to wrap that around with a little bit more pita bread, dunk that in batter, fry it, off you go, right? So the whole idea is just bring in anything. Now, it's really hard to get past the food codes because, you know, you get into a bit of a grey area where everyone brings their own food. But what would you fry if you went into Ushabi souvlaki?
That's a good question. I feel kind of like on the spot here. I don't know. I don't eat a lot of fried food, like deep fried food. Like in my In my dairy eating days, probably like a chocolate bar of some description. Like not a Mars bar, but maybe like a picnic, maybe like a deep fried picnic.
I've never had a deep fried Mars bar.
I have.
It's on the bucket
From
list.
Joe's Fish and Chip Shop in Brunswick West.
Who's Joe?
Out. Joe is just the owner of the fish and chip shop.
Ah, Joe
but
Mama.
it's an institution. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. Fuck. Should we just end the episode?
Yeah, he's on Ligma Street. You fucking idiot.
I feel so old. I feel so old after that. Oh my god. So not hip. That's a good idea. I should be Souvlaki, but wouldn't it just be easier just to like have a very diverse menu with like 30 different
you would have suggestions, yeah.
But then people don't have to bring in their because it's like it's like we're going out for dinner. Not only am I going to pay you to deep fry something, but I've got to go to the shops and pay money for my own dinner to bring it to you and then pay you again. It's like we assume
that 80% of our customers are either cooked or drunk.
Yeah, but then it's
this isn't a going out place.
Yeah, but then it's like, well, how are you making money? How are you covering rent?
Charge through the nose, because again, these people, are drunk. Can't understand. You just tap everything when you, as in tap your card on heaps of things when you're drunk. It's like $50 for a shirt.
So people who are drunk, they're going to the fishmonger.
No,
they're going to the deli and they're bringing in their piece of fish.
Well, the name is obviously I should be Souvlaki, where you're like, okay, got a Souvlaki. Oh, what if we deep fried? Oh, it's $50 more. Not 50.
I'm skeptical of the viability of this venture.
Well, wait till I tell you about our other venture, Slauncher Wok. Slauncher Wok being all the best in Gaelic, where it's an Irish wok shop. Yeah,
I can kind of get a bit more on board. Is it a wok shop run by Irish people, or is it like Irish fusion food?
We're looking for early investors, so if you want to get on and help us with the idea, we've just got the name.
Okay. All right. Well, let's workshop it.
The depth, the deep two. God, that's a mouthful. Anyways, I'm Marco, co-host of the Hey, Daniel Gafford, what's the name of our podcast?
The JVG NBA Tribute Show.
Wow, I can't believe it's that easy. Thanks, Gaff. You probably know us as two members of the Four Man Weave plus Marco, but we know you as our next listener.
Well said, Lucas. I gotta ask, how do we differ from the Pack of Basketball podcasts?
It's a great question, Marco. You see, on our basketball podcast, we have two male co-hosts.
Wow, truly groundbreaking. After this episode, stay on your favourite podcasting app and give us a spin.
To kind of loop it back into basketball, this team's been bad on D every year, like sometimes catastrophically so, like you saw today. At various points in the season, they've hemorrhaged points, i.e. when they lost 10 straight. They obviously are so much fun offensively, and they have Borrego has kind of instituted like this quick hit, dribble drive, pass, drive and kick offense. Lots of threes, lots of dunks, lots of layups. It's really fun. They want to play fast. But you can't win at a high level doing that if there's no defensive structure behind. And one of the problems with playing fast is that the other team's going to play fast as well. One of the problems with running in transition is that there's no one back if you don't score. And this team just is quite obviously missing a few crucial elements, like a defensive rim protecting big, someone who's like a lob threat that's not Montrezl Harrell. And how they go about getting that has been something that we've kind of discussed on this pod for the last 6 months, but Gordon Hayward is still there, so...
I didn't see him today. He must have been... Oh, that's right, injured.
Yeah, injured for the last 9 weeks. His salary is still there. You're gonna have to pay Miles Bridges, and at the start of the season when he was averaging 27 points a game for the first month, and everyone was like, Miles Bridges could be a max player. Now it's like, if you give Miles Bridges more than 23,
I'm thinking 20.
Well, Alonzo Ball got 20,
Yeah.
Miles Bridges can at least point to the number of points that he averaged and say, make it more than this, and he averaged 20 points. I'd be okay with them giving Miles Bridges 22, 23. Maybe split the middle and go 22.5. That's a nice rounded number. 110 over 4 years. But you can't go more than that, realistically. And then lots of their role players are kind of one-way players.
Yeah.
And similar to the Lakers, they don't have like an amazing selection of like one-way players, and having some of them out there just causes problems for the other end, you know? So I think they have a lot of roster construction quibbles to address, and there was a report that came out this morning saying that Mitch Kupchak, the GM, may not be the GM of the team next season. But I also think, like, is it kind of like outside? Is it like out of the question to consider, like, is James Borrego the person to
Be the problem.
No, is he the person to like coach this team? Because like they've got talented offensive players, like that much is evident. They've got a good offense, but the D has just been so catastrophically bad. And although they don't have amazing defenders, you know, littered throughout the roster, like the D has through 3 years, or maybe even 4 years, has he been there? Has been, you know, has been worse than it should be. Like they shouldn't have been this bad the whole time. Some of that does have to reflect on the coaching staff.
But like a 6 in offense is very good for a team that isn't very good, right? But like Mason Plumlee, one of the McDaniels brothers, are they even brothers? You got one of the Cody, one of the Martins, right? There is not much to work with here on defense, and like LaMelo Ball still isn't a good defender, and he doesn't try on defense. Terry Rozier is undersized for a 2. I struggle to see like what his role is on a championship team. They've like don't pin this on James Borrego. James Borrego bicker stuff. I like that joke from Tuesday, but like I think he's done a bit of an above average job on offense, given the talent. And then I would say he's done roughly, you know, an average delivery on defense. Like this roster is the 20th best defense. Well, what do you reckon? Do you reckon he hasn't?
I think that this roster is really good offensively, and I would say that like 6 is obviously really fucking good. But I don't think that that it's like an amazing job that he's got this roster, because if you look at like that he's got this roster to 6, because LaMelo is obviously like, you know, a premier table setting point guard. With him, you've kind of got your offensive structure. He's not as good as like a Trey or a Luka, but in his play style, your offensive style is set. You know, Trey, Luka, it's like, all right, we're going to like isolate pick and rolls and we're going to just let you go to work. With LaMelo, it's like, we're going to get you in transition and we're going to see what happens, because it's going to be fucking great. Miles Bridges, you know, for everything that I just said about him not being a max player, like he's a good offensive player. Gordon Hayward, when he's played, is a really good offensive player. Terry Rozier is a good offensive player. Like, yeah, you can't maybe see what his role is on this team going forward, but like, you know, Kelly Oubre's had a few games where he's popped off for like 50 points.
Has he?
Not 50, but you know,
he's
had a couple of 40 where he's made like a million threes. I don't think that it's like an amazing coaching job to get this offense humming really well, but I do think that it's an indictment year after year after year that the D is really, really bad. And to wit, I've just looked at the last 4 years of Charlotte Hornets defensive numbers, and they've been 20th, 25th, and 23rd. So, well, James Borrego's been there that whole time, and to not even be able to, maybe you've had underwhelming personnel, but to not even be able to sniff like a top half D in 4 seasons, like that's a lack of a failure of coaching to me. So if you assume if you think like I do that it's not an indicator of a brilliant coaching mind that this offense is good, but that it could be an indicator of someone who just cannot coach D, then it's like, what is he actually bringing to the table? And is it time to think about a change? And I wonder, with Kupchak leaving, if we could be looking at more than just like roster changes.
Well, usually when you see the front office change, the coach does as well.
Well, sometimes, but just as often, what happens is what shouldn't happen, which is what happened in Minnesota most recently, where the GM comes in and says, "No, I want to give this guy time to figure it out," but he's thinking to himself, if this guy isn't it, like, I'm going to pull the plug. And then it turns out this guy is not it. And then you pull the plug a third of the way through the season and you ruin the season. Because no team, with the exception of the Atlanta Hawks from last year, no team that fires a coach mid-season like makes the playoffs or like lives up to their expectations.
Or gets better.
Yeah. Also with the exception of Ty Lue. Although that team that he took over, was 31-10 when David Black got fired that championship year. So,
how about that? That's the stats here that did too. Let's move on to, I would say, the best playing game we've seen so far, outside of LA and Golden State last year. It was the Minnesota Timberwolves beating the LA Clippers 109-104. It was really good. It was a really good game. The Clippers gave up a big lead, which is just a rite of passage when the start of the game starts with a P by the sounds of it. It was actually one of the commentators, I can't remember which one, was like, this Clippers team is gritty. They've come back from 10-point deficits like 54 times this year, some massive number, which it's like, well, did they use like a stylish font to write Los Angeles, and are they gritty and do they wear black jerseys? Paul George,
street lights, not spotlights. Okay.
I just want to talk about Paul George a bit. He's so much more fun to watch now than he was a couple of years ago. Like, I actually love the way he sort of gallops up the court. Like, he never really just sort of walks into a set.
He's got those long strides with the ball where
Yeah.
he's kind of covering a lot of ground, but he's a lot more like...
It's like he's listening to music as well, though, because it's like sort of offbeat a little bit, and then as soon as the pick and roll comes, he's just gallops a little bit. And it must be easier for the defense to predict, but he's got this downwards momentum behind him, and his jump shot looks nice. He, shot about average from the floor from this game. You messaged our group chat. You messaged our group chat saying this must be one of the bad ones for the Paul George fans out there, and I think he scored like 8 points since then. So I feel pretty good.
To be fair, and I did think maybe this is a bit early because I messaged that just before halftime.
But
he was shooting 3 of 14 at that point. And he had missed.
That's pretty safe.
He scored his first 2, and then he'd gone 1 of 12.
Yeah.
So I was like, and I also did, just to cover my bases, as I said so far. So the statement that I made was true, but he did obviously turn it around and finish with 34 points on 6 of 10. Yeah. I agree with you in the sense that he does have that kind of gallop, but he's also kind of he's just ready to go, and he covers so much ground, but as soon as it comes time to make the first move, whether it's open floor and he's just putting a move on someone, or whether the screen comes, he gets really low. When his handle is on, it's tight and compact, and he can do a lot with it. It can get a little bit crazy, and he can be a bit turnover prone, but when it's on, it's working. And he looked really good in the second half of this game.
All right, now let's move on to Patrick Beverley. He who jumped on the stands after winning the game, threw his jersey into the crowd, was seen crying after celebrating. Threw the ball up as high as he could, which the last time I've seen someone do that was Steph Curry in 2015 after getting a stop. Patrick Beverley, I'll quote him, which he tweeted a little bit after getting a little bit of flack. Quote, "We celebrating because Minnesota deserves this," a lot of capitals here. "A lot of pain the past couple of years. Be happy for us." And at some point there were a few guys on Twitter that were like, okay, Minnesota, they were up there with Sacramento in terms of just disaster franchise, and they obviously made the playoffs with Tibbs, but this is their homegrown sort of.
They made the playoffs with Tibbs
on the last day of the year.
Well, and then it arguably unfurled a even greater disaster than not making the playoffs for 15 years. It reminds me of you watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Reminds me of what Tyrion says to Cersei in season 3 when she sends Shay away, and he's like, "One day you'll think you're safe, and then your joy will turn to ashes in your mouth." It was they were like, "Yeah, we got Jimmy, we made the playoffs, everything's fucking Gucci."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was the way that unfolded, I guarantee lots of Minnesota fans are I probably just wish we didn't make the playoffs. Probably just wish we didn't have that experience. So yeah, they have been one of the league's premier disaster franchises ever since KG left, which at this point is 17 years ago or something absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so this is a homegrown sort of playoff team, and they are a playoff team, and they proved that in the regular season. Obviously won the play-in, so now they're in the playoffs. But what do you take away from this game?
Well, I liked watching the game. Like, it was, we talked about it on Tuesday night on the 4-Man Weave plus Marco on the JVG feed, which if you haven't checked that out, you should, because it was a lot of fun. So that's something to check out. But we talked about it was obviously going to be a real chippy game, and like right from the get-go, real chippy game. I think the most notable thing is like Cat's disappearing act, and whether you think that is something that's gonna like linger into the first round against Memphis, or whether you think that that's an aberration and that he'll get over that. And I guess it's difficult to know because he's someone who has essentially no playoff resume.
But he's the greatest shooting big man of all time.
Yeah. He
didn't make a three, but so I wonder how that works. But yeah,
do you think that that's Cat? Do you
yeah,
think
yeah.
You think it's obviously Dirk?
Well, I don't even care who it is. Probably Dirk. But like, shut the fuck up, man. Like, you're in your 5th year. You won a 3-point shooting contest. Like, is all of a sudden he's
in more than his 5th year.
Is Obadiah Toppin the greatest dunker of all time because he won an all-star contest?
Yeah.
Like, Marco Bellinelli's not like, yeah, fuck off. Like, fuck you, Ray Allen. I'm the best shooter. Like, he won a meaningless event. He's a good shooter. He's not like, you know how you like see Steph, Clay, you see some shooters like that, like Devin Booker. You're like, wow, that is a beautiful jump shot. Like, they were just born with this talent, like Maybelline. Like Cat, you don't get those vibes. And like, also because of who he is and how he plays, you don't want him shooting like that. You want him coming in, like taking those big steps and like smacking someone in the face before finishing in a layup, right? That's what you want. You want him bullying down low. It's shut up, man, and also just shut up, Cat. I know you've had a rough 24 months, and
we're over that. We don't have to cut him in. And
on this pod, we put a gun to his head, which I thought was way over the top. But come on, man, like shut up. You're not even the best shooting big man on your team. Naz Reid outplayed you.
No. I think on that discussion, I think it is like he shoots 40% from 3 every year, and he shoots like 8 threes a game, which is incredible. But like Dirk Nowitzki, you literally look at, like, if you showed Dirk Nowitzki's shot chart to a bull, you'd get charged immediately because it's all red.
Did you come up with that?
Yeah,
that's
just on the spot.
Good
It's all red from literally everywhere. You name it. 3. If Dirk played now, it's the same argument like Larry Bird. Like if Larry Bird played today, Larry Bird would be shooting 10 threes and he'd be making 42% of them, most likely. If Dirk played now, Dirk would literally be fucking shooting a 3 every possession and he'd be making it.
But also, like, with shooting, you have to factor in that Dirk has that beautiful fadeaway. Like, what's Cat outside of a fucking set shot? Like,
Cat doesn't have like a post fadeaway game.
Yeah.
He doesn't have an off the dribble 3-point game. Not that Dirk did, but like Dirk literally could just shoot over anyone because he was 7 foot tall. Back to Cat, like the performance, like there's no way of telling like how he actually is going to be in high pressure situations because he's played 5 career playoff games, which was 4 years ago, and he averaged 15 points. So 15 points, shot 46%, didn't shoot 30% from 3. Not those numbers don't fill you up with like super confidence that he's going to like rock up and be averaging 35 and 15. But it's such a small sample size that it's really impossible to know. It's a complete wild card.
But look at the way Ty Lue took him out of the game. It was throwing Nick Batum on him, who, like, in a regular season game, if he says Nick Batum, he's going right at him, right? Nick Batum, extremely cerebral defender, but undersized and can't, hold up against the strength of Cat. But as soon as Cat got the ball, they doubled him. It's the playoffs. You can be a little bit rougher, and Cat was clearly surprised at that playoffs, play-in, but playoffs. And as soon as Zubac came around, Zubac, who's just a veteran now, which is kind of weird to think, but like he's like, okay, the ref's over there. He can't see if I swing on this side. So there's one instance where Cat goes to spin base and Zoo's just like, nah, smack you, and just smack the crap out of his arm. And Cat's like, where's the foul? And it's like, you're not going to get that in the playoffs. Like, if he was close enough to the ball, the ref can't see it, like, just keep moving, right? And that's just how it is. So when he goes up against Memphis, if Memphis want to do the exact same thing, they'll have Kyle Anderson and Brandon Clark where they can cover him with that. And so he'll be able to, follow him around screens and make sure he doesn't get the 3-pointer off. And they've also got a really good help big defender in Steven Adams, who's just like, okay, if he does want to go inside, Steven Adams is going to be right there. So it's like, and the whole time Steven Adams is on the court, there's going to be a Jared Vanderbilt or a Jaden McDaniels that he can also just help off. So he's going to be facing the exact same problem. So we could be seeing the start of a holy shit, Cat, wilts in the playoffs. Like Cat is, as Bill Simmons says, he's not passing the Ewing theory because it's like, awesome, you're the greatest shooting big man of all time. You haven't made a three in a game that starts with play yet.
Yeah. Edwards was good in this game.
Edwards was sick.
So was D'Lo. I wouldn't bank on D'Lo being good though. To be honest, being this good throughout the first round. And it just feels like there's no way this team's gonna really do much.
What's your prediction
for
the series?
For the series, I'd say 5 games.
Yeah, I want to say 5 as well.
Yeah, I think maybe there'll be a few close games, but I really can't see.
Well, look at what Memphis did last year. I think the first 2 games were close against Utah. Maybe did they win game 1?
They won the first. They won the first.
They won the first game. Dylan Brooks is fucking yapping.
Yeah,
I could see that exact same thing playing out for this year with Memphis being on the good side.
Don't need Dylan Brooks to yap. Don't.
One thing I'm really worried about is if Patrick Beverley, when things start getting out of control, as you know, he's been known to make some non-basketball plays. If he does something to Jar, like he did to Russell Westbrook, where he snapped his Achilles, if he does something, not only should he be banned from the league, right? Can you imagine if you're Adam Silver? Ja Morant has amassed the most social media clicks out of any athlete in the whole entire NBA this past year, right?
Is that true?
That's true.
I would have put anything on LaMelo for that.
Ja Morant has amassed the most social media clicks. He's clearly a young up-and-comer for the league. They're going to make so much money by Ja Morant just being good. He's in a small market. Again, Adam Silver would love to see that. And if Patrick Beverley has a sook in Game 5 when they're down 20 and just decides to dive at the ball and just completely rob us of a year of Ja Morant and potentially even longer if it's something like major, it's probably not going to happen, but I'm petrified of it happening just by watching Patrick Beverley just smack Marcus Morris and do that kind of stuff.
That is literally a terrifying thought. Just on Beverley, can we talk about the technical that he got with Marcus Morris at the jump ball?
Yeah.
Where Marcus Morris had already been teed up and they're at the jump ball and there's doing a little bit of hand wrestling and they're pushing each other. Not no one's feet are moving. They're not getting into it, but there's just hand on the chest and one person will bat it away and then the other person will push and then they'll bat it away. Happens all the time. The ref calls a double tech. Immediately he sees it and he's like, that's a double tech. And then he's like, oh shit, that was Morris already has a tech. I don't want him to get ejected for just hand fighting. So what are we going to do? We're going to review it. And then they go to review it and you clearly see that Marcus Morris has his arm on Pat Bev first.
And a bit of force as well.
Yeah, his arm is literally right there on Pat Bev's shoulder. Pat Bev slaps it away, then Pat Bev goes and Morris slaps it away, and the hand fighting ensues. And then the commentators were like, yeah. So what they're gonna do is just make sure that it was actually Pat Bev that started it, and then you clearly see that it's Morris, and the commentators like, yeah, you can see Pat Bev right there. And it's I think Reggie Miller was on the call. It's what the fuck are you looking at? Yeah. And then they wiped it off and just gave Pat Bev clearly. Because the ref had initially seen something that he deemed as an infraction, and then he was like, "Oh shit! I don't want to do this if it's going to make Morris,
leave."
Well, and then which I think is bullshit because you shouldn't be Morris had already got one tech.
Yeah. And the whole idea of an ejection from 2 techs isn't that you did something as bad as a flagrant 2.
Yeah.
The fact is you did 2 small things.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to eject him off that, it's you didn't eject him off that.
You ejected him off
because he already did a small thing.
Yeah. It's I just think I think that shouldn't be a tech. I think that should.
But if you blow your whistle,
you should walk in and break it up. But if you blow your whistle, you have to do it. You should go into the game being I don't want to impose myself on the game in an unnecessary way. But once you blow the whistle, you have to, you just cannot. Even the refs at social netball, if the ball goes out off me and they call it the other way, and I say, no, it was actually out off me, they'll be like, nah, it's your ball.
Yeah.
They're like, I've made the call, I've blown the whistle, it's your ball. Doesn't matter. If the refs at Cityside Sports are doing that, Ed Malloy, do better.
Yeah. I've never actually seen anything like that where, like, it's not even like he was a superstar. Like, what's their reasoning for keeping a Morris twin out there? Like, to make the game close? Because, like, he was playing well. Like, he was playing minutes. It was weird. Like, the whole point of 2 techs as an ejection isn't because the second one is worse. It's because you've done 2 small things.
Yeah. I'd like to have a bit of a broader conversation about the plane, because through 2 years, and admittedly through the plane not being complete, like if tomorrow and the day after's games are like, you know, barn burners, all timers, and it's like, whoa, the plane's amazing, but maybe I'll walk back what I'm about to say. But so far, I'm not a fan of the plane, because the 9-10 games just look like bad teams playing each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck was Atlanta, Charlotte? Like, not to say that there's no blowouts in the first round, because there are. Like, a 1 and an 8 has just as much chance of being a blowout, you know, as this did. But like, why are we doing it if there's like extra? Why are we just adding extra blowouts in? And the Spurs Pelicans game doesn't look like a blowout, but again, like, for most of the game there was no contest. Until the fourth quarter run. And even then, Spurs didn't actually manage to make it really, tangibly, like, have a chance to win. And I just kind of feel like, why add extra stuff in if the extra stuff isn't good? Like, just go straight to the good games. Just make the 7 and the 8. Just leave it how it was. That way we can see the Clippers play the Grizzlies. It'll be an amazing series. Like, what's wrong with that? Suns versus Wolves would have been really fun. It would be playoff basketball. Like, why make the Spurs play? We don't need to see more of the Spurs. And I just think, like, if the argument for having the play-in is like, you know, if a team has a superstar that gets injured and they drop all the way down out of the playoffs, like, they still have a chance.
Yeah.
But how regularly does that happen?
But that's not the whole reason.
No, but then what are the other reasons aside from money?
Right.
Because obviously money is...
All right, money.
Yeah.
There's the Zion rule where it's like, okay, Zion missed half the year, but what if they had, an extra 2 games
yeah,
to
but it's
tie
just
it up?
like, well, that never happens.
Right. So, it happened that they wanted to make it. But anyway, so there's that. There's also an incentive to not tank, because
but that has proven to be untrue, because literally the team that they're like, yeah, if we can get this team to not tank, it'd be amazing, is the Sacramento Kings. And the Sacramento Kings decided to tank rather than...
Well, because they lost too many games. But, like, what if the Spurs...
Well, the Spurs also lost too many games to be involved in the postseason. Just saying that. If you lose 48 games, you shouldn't be involved in...
postseason play.
In postseason play. And just to kind of, like, illustrate that, the Spurs won 4 more games than the Kings, who took themselves completely out of it for the last month. Like, the Kings weren't trying. They shut down Sabonis, they shut down Fox, and the Spurs still only won 4 more games than the fucking Kings, who were terrible and who weren't trying. Like, why are the Spurs and the Pelicans, the Pelicans as well, like, why are teams playing? It's bad enough in the years where the East was a tire fire and the 7 and 8 seed every year would be below 500. Like, why do we need more worse teams playing for longer? Because the injury thing, like, never happens. Like, I can't think of an example where a guaranteed playoff team had an injury to their superstar and it completely tanked their season and they fell to 9th. And it would have worked out in the time in that their superstar could come back and play in the play.
Well, the only time was the bubble, where they made it so that if New Orleans win enough games, Zion could be in the playoffs.
Even if that happens once every 4 years and there's an actual instance of that, which I think is drastically overstating the regularity with which that would happen. The other 3 is, it's just like, we're playing 9-10 and it's terrible teams playing each other.
Yeah.
And then...
Do you like 7-8?
Well, not really, because there shouldn't be any there shouldn't be any jeopardy. You should just be 7 and 8 and then go.
Yeah, like it is a bit scary. It's like, okay, Minnesota, you've had this homegrown playoff team, good on you. But, you know, if you lose to LA, which is feasible, what if you just have a bad shooting night and all of a sudden?
Yeah, but then like for a viewer, if that happens and now it's Clippers versus Pelicans, tomorrow or the next day in the play-in, and then the Pelicans win. Whoa, amazing. The Pelicans are in the play-in and it's fucking sick and the Pelicans fans love it. And then instead of watching a 42-win team with a superstar play, I'm watching a 36-win team. The product is worse, not better. Just because the Pelicans beat the Clippers in one game doesn't mean the Pelicans are a better team. They're quantifiably worse. Yeah. And now I have to watch them for 4 games when I could have watched a better team.
Yeah. Like I think it does more for games 1 to 82 than after 82. Because if you're a fan of this team, like Marco, right, New Orleans fan, he's sitting there going, okay, the Lakers need to lose. And all of a sudden, he's got his own little seeding battle where he's like, okay, we beat Houston, awesome. Like, we still need to win these games. They mean something. And it's like he's got his own little seeding battle to get into the play-in. But as soon as the play-in happens, it's probably going to be bad basketball. And maybe the best case scenario for one of these 9-10 teams is that they get in and we all lose because instead of Phoenix winning in 5 games, they win in 4 games because it's a lesser opponent, right? Not that you really want the 1 and 8 seed to be like that good of a game anyway, because that's sort of the present for getting the number 1 seed. But like it gives fan bases of those teams and what should be the Kings like a tiny little glimmer of hope, where instead of just being like, okay, tanking battle starts with 30 games to go in the season, the tanking battle, like for the Wizards, like the Wizards only really shut down their guys, like they didn't shut down everyone, but the Wizards only shut down KP with 2 games left. What if there was no play-in whatsoever? They might have shut him down with 7 games left or 10 games left. And that's maybe enough, and maybe you can look at how that works, you know, viewership wise, like how much is, you know, a Wizards fan tuning in to watch Kristaps Porzingis and Kyle Kuzma, you know, with 7 games left, as opposed to with 2 games left if they had actually like played it all out.
Yeah, but then that sounds to me like prioritizing games 70 onwards of the regular season, which is arguably for many teams the least important games of the season because their situation's already sorted.
Yeah.
That's prioritizing that over the actual playoffs because you're improving the product at the end of the season in theory, although I would point again to Sacramento as a team that counters that. Also, the Spurs literally not trying to win and falling ass backwards into the playoffs, into the play-in because the Lakers were fucking terrible and the Kings shut it down.
Yeah. That
to me is hardly like a ringing endorsement of like teams fighting it out for the spots. Like one of the teams that got in there. The 2 teams that made it in, 9 and 10 in the West, like one of them was the least bad of the bad teams, and the other one accidentally got there. So if you're prioritizing the last 12 games of the regular season at the expense of potentially diluting the actual playoffs, it's like, what's the point? Because everyone who...
Yeah, that's a good term.
As the neutral viewer, like I'm not talking about this as a fan of a team that wants to sneak into the play-in with my glimmer of hope or whatever, but like just as like an NBA fan, I can deal with game 75 of the regular season being like irrelevant for half the teams in the league because I know that in 7 games time I'm going to watch like high intensity, high leverage basketball. If I'm watching shit teams in the in game 75 and thinking to myself, if this new system works, if it works out the way that the league wants it to work out, then I'm going to be watching a worse product in the playoffs. It's like, well,
one other benefit is that it gives all these top 6 seeds a week off. So it gives them a week off.
You could just say we're giving you a week off and build that in. The NFL does that.
Yeah, you could always cut down on the regular season.
The NFL, you get a week after the regular season before the playoffs start, and then if you make it to the Super Bowl, you get another week. You could just. It's not like the calendar is like no, we have to have it from here. No, you could just, if you wanted to give teams a rest. It's just like it's kind of like you're taking away with both hands because you're trying to say we're going to make the end of the regular season matter more, and then it turns out to actually not matter that much to some of the teams that are in anyway. Like the Wizards still shut it down, the Kings shut it down. Maybe they play an extra 3 games longer, maybe they don't. and then you still dilute the playoffs if it works. Like if you get like the upset that you want. Well, like I just don't really see the upside, and it sounds like A, trying to fix a problem that isn't there, and B, that like if you did want to fix the problem, this wouldn't be the way to go about it.
Well, yeah, to fix all those problems, just cut down the number of games in the regular season. Like make it 62 games.
Or you just say it's not that big of a deal that the last 12 games of the season for the teams that are shit don't matter.
Well,
you just cop that and say, like, we can deal with March being a bad month for basketball because once we get into April, it's everyone's on board and everyone's fucking into it.
Yeah.
Like, if your viewership numbers...
You're not losing viewers who are like, oh, that was a shit game, 83, 81.
And it also happens in other sports as well. Like, you know, in American sports it happens. Like, in the NFL, like, by the end of the season, like, yes, half of the teams are fighting to get into the playoffs and fighting for seeding, and, you know, it's jostling and everything, and it's exciting. But the other half, it's like there's 16 teams, there's 20 teams in the NFL that aren't going to make it, and 15 of them know going in that they're not going to make it, like going into the last day of the season. So it's not like it's not like it doesn't happen in footy, and it doesn't happen in soccer, like it does. Like you get to the last 8 games,
you fall over the line.
A team like, you know, like
the Wizards.
I think like what, but to use like another analogy, like if last season, like Carlton, they were like 10th, and they were 10th with like 3 games left, and it's like they're not going to make finals. They might finish 12th, they might finish 10th. Doesn't really matter. They're not making finals. Like no one's like, wow, the AFL really needs to fix this.
Yeah.
You know, like
it's like you should have won earlier.
What's the problem? The teams can just go through the motions of the season being important for them at some point and not important for them at other points. Like it just seems like a solution to an imaginary problem. The proof will be in the pudding. Like if tomorrow's games are like amazing and it's like a fucking instant classic, and then like next year, like the Kings and the Wizards and the Knicks, all of the teams who like this year,
the big ones.
Yeah, the big ones. If there's like a genuine race for the play-in next year and it's exciting, and game 78, 79, you know, there's like game 81 is like the Spurs versus the Kings, and it's like whoever wins the
the 9
wins the tiebreaker, and you like sneak into the 9 seed. Like, cool. I guess that'll be fun. But it's like right now it just like seems to not actually be doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that if it were to do what it was supposed to be doing, it would still like dilute the playoff product.
I will reserve the right to hold my judgment until I see a bigger sample size, because that Golden State game against LA was really good. And that's my favourite team, and I got to watch them play. But this year, it's like most of the games we've seen have been bad. Yes, Minnesota was good, and like, you know, that means a lot to Minnesota apparently. And like, I don't think the next games are going to be that good. I think LA will like easily take care of New Orleans, and Cleveland, maybe Cleveland and Atlanta's fun, but like, you're right, it doesn't matter. And the NBA hasn't put this in as a permanent thing. Like they're renewing it yearly, as in they've done that once, but they renewed it for the last year. They're going to have a look at it again. Like maybe, you know, so many more people watched the that Minnesota LA game that it's going to be worth it for them to do it. But then there's some incentives there that they could, you know, Adam Silver could come out and say, oh, you know, you're doing it for we're doing it for rest, so Chris Paul gets to rest an extra week before the playoffs. But it's like, no, man, because you know 2 sentences ago you just told me that more people watched that than they watched the first round.
I think that 3 or 4 years is like a appropriate sample size to judge whether it's working or not. So like, I know that I'm getting grouchy about it before it's probably fair to get grouchy about it. But for me,
you've got a podcast, you have to have an opinion.
For me, the early returns are not promising.
Okay.
Which makes me feel bad, because sometimes I feel like I'm too negative as a person, and I really want to try and be like positive. But then it's like you put out a 29-point loss in one of the playing games, and it's like, why am I watching this?
Like Charlotte don't deserve to be play something.
Well, neither do the teams in the West. You win 34 and 36 games, go home, go to Cancun, like have your exit meeting. Say, good job, boys. Don't get fat over the off season unless you're European, in which case you'll obviously come back fat and have to work it off. We'll see you in 2 months.
Even like, you know, resident Spurs fan Jackson was like, the game's over. He's like, oh, that was a close one. But that's all right. 9th pick, 20% at getting the top 4 pick. Because really, that's what matters.
How about that? Do you want to share that? Do you want to share that tweet that in the Hive, like a Charlotte Hornets fan page had?
Yeah, this was spotted by Marco. Let me just get it up.
The saddest thing
at
to
the
come out
Hive.
of.
Small consolation for the night. The Pelicans won. If they beat the Clippers on Friday, the Hornets will get the 15th pick from them due to last summer's Devontae Graham trade.
Nice.
That's a great way to end the podcast, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, how about I read my tweet, which is currently doing freaking numbers.
What's your Twitter handle?
Sean Carroll NBA. Oh wow.
That's Sean SHAW.
Dude, someone just replied to me with a photo of Kevin Durant that says "Shut the fuck up and get a job, bozo."
Who? What's the username?
So the tweet was, the username is Phoenix. Broom Phoenix.
I second that. Get a job, bozo.
All right, so this is the picture. Jalen Green goes, it is what it is, because there was a lot of discussion about him because Bill Simmons was like, I put Herb Jones on my first team All NBA, and then he had a joke about like, fuck Jalen Green, like what's it matter if you average 20 points while shooting 20% from the floor? And he was having a joke, but he was like, look, I'm gonna preference the guy who's winning games, right?
Well, that's a joke, but also the sentiment is like real.
So then all these Rockets fans were like, he said fuck Bill Simmons, and there was this article that was like, not fuck Bill Simmons, fuck Jalen Green. That was the name of the article, and Bill Simmons retweeted it and was like, look, this is getting a little bit too far, man. Like, I said that in a string of jokes. We're laughing as we're saying it. You read the headline, it's obviously completely different. Aggregators, old man. So all these Jalen Green supporters come out. I thought there were like 5, but apparently there's thousands. And all these things like, never listen to Bill Simmons again. He's a piece of shit. Like, fuck that guy. Jalen Green's got next, right?
So they were like, they could absolutely abide by Bill Simmons and the Ringer being like institutionally racist. But if he criticizes Jalen Green, they're like, no, that's
it's like, dude, don't go in pining for Jalen Green yet. Like, he hasn't actually shown much as a rookie, but. Then so heaps of people are also like, the Cade fans are coming out with him being like, man, Cade and Jalen Green, they're going to be defending, like, they got next 10 years, they're just going to be dueling it out. And I said, our generation's Jabari and Wiggins, right? With a lock emoji and a huff emoji. Doing numbers, 1 like, wasn't me. And then someone just said, shut the fuck up, bozo, and get a job.
Fucking hell, Phoenix Broom?
Yeah, Phoenix Broom, Pistons fan.
Bloody hell. All right, well,
hold on. Sorry, I know we got to finish, but this guy's got his pinned tweet is a photo of Thanos with Cade's face photoshopped on him.
This is why we're in the GC yesterday, and you're telling me that I got to up my social media usage, and that the Bluebird Twitter is by far the best app. Then friend of the pod Lucas jumps in and seconds that and says that it's by far the best app. But then what you're basically telling me is that I'm going to go onto Twitter so that I can find people who literally unironically have Cade Cunningham's head photoshopped onto Thanos' body.
It's inevitable.
What am I...
And then, sorry, the caption is, it's over for the league next season.
What am I...
I am inevitable, says Thanos Cade.
What's the pull here? Like, why would I possibly subject myself to that voluntarily? I'm genuinely like, I'm kind of trashing Twitter, but I'm also actually confused. Like, what is the pull of Twitter if this is what it is? Also, you just like tweet something out and then you just get some fuckwit coming in and saying, get a job. Like, what? That would truly unlock my negative impulses in a way that I'm not sure I'm ready for.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst, but I thought I was pretty funny. Dante, I'll speak to you next week. Peace. We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly, with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, two steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingads.org.au/get gambling off SBS with hyphens in between.